Right guys, let's get the headlines off the top here because I've got a lot of notes that I made throughout the game, and yes, it was a disappointing one, but there is a lot to unpack from this one. Let's just go straight into the Bergvall thing. I want to just get it done, but so we can actually discuss the performance and the rest of it. Bergvall shouldn't have been sent off, okay? In the sense that he didn't make enough tackles in the game that were wrong to be sent off. The Luis Diaz one was clearly a Luis Diaz dive, and I get it, like Arne Slot was remonstrating with the official, but ultimately it wasn't really a foul. And the second one was a foul, but that would have only been his first yellow. Ultimately, I think things kind of balance out like that, and I was beginning to wonder whether the referee had a couple of people in his ear letting him know, you didn't quite get that one right there, mate, so maybe just don't worry about this future one, but that's not really the point. The point is that actually, the way that it was dealt with directly led to Tsimikas going off the field, Liverpool being a man down during that period, the ball going into that area, someone like Konate having to come over and cover it, Konate and Van Dijk being left in no man's land because they had to go and cover a position that should have been on the field. And if you're not going to deal with it, then surely you shouldn't punish Liverpool for having a player fouled in that build-up play rather than almost allowing Spurs some sort of advantage at that point. Like, if you foul a player and you gain an advantage, surely then there has to be something to level out that playing field. That, I would say, is not, in this particular case, a yellow card, but Tsimikas should be back on the pitch by then. He deals with it, or Konate is in a much better position. Bergvall doesn't have all that running to do in that space because he just closed down by a genuine centre-back who's fulfilling his correct position, and the game is still 0-0. That's a very... There are going to be a lot of people who say, caveat, caveat, caveat. Yeah, here's my other caveat for the whole game. Liverpool were in such control for such long periods of the game, and I get it, control, like there's many different people who can kind of form controls in many different ways, but I'd say they were much closer to control than the Manchester United game that they found themselves in just a couple of days ago, and the overall build-up play was much more controlling of Spurs than the disappointing result that Liverpool had just a couple of days ago. A lot of notes on this one. Like I said, every position has a note next to it, and the notes didn't really change whether Liverpool were winning or drawing. So, make of that what you will. My second note on this game is Solanke scored. I mean, I know that ultimately he was offside, and I know that Trent was just about playing him off. But I feel like in the future those kind of things are going to be called onside, offside. I know they're going to have the semi-automatic offside anyway. Liverpool probably very lucky that they did have VAR on this game because VAR managed to check that one. The actual flag on the field remained down. If this is just one round ago, Liverpool are 1-0 down, could be going 2-0 down at some point with the Bergvall goal as well. So I just think, again, it'll come down to Trent just not pulling up in time, not paying attention to the game in the right way. And it'll be a narrative. I don't think it's as big a problem as a lot of people are making out. I think we'll talk about Trent in a minute. I want to talk about Trent and Bradley, and I want to talk about all Liverpool's fullbacks, why Liverpool are currently struggling at the back, and why the difference in the struggles at the back is having an impact and a ripple effect throughout the whole team. Weirdly similar to the ripple effect that it had throughout the whole team during the Klopp era as well. But I also want to talk about three other things that came out of that Solanke chance, right? First of all, Trent playing him on. Secondly, we don't have a striker like Solanke capable right now. We have Jota, who's semi-fit. We have Nunez, who's semi-capable. And we have Diaz, who's an amalgamation of the two of them. Sometimes feels like a bit of a halfway house, sometimes feel like he's absolutely in the right position, and I get where it is that he wants to play, but I'm kind of desperate, if I'm being completely honest, as good of a game as Nunez had, to move him on from the club and bring someone else in that replacement position. The ideal that happens is that in January he goes out for a small loan fee with an obligation to buy, as is being done a lot in the Champions League or across Europe right now, and ultimately Liverpool bring in someone like a Marmoush. I think they're probably trying to line up a couple of deals here, but I don't think it's going to happen in time. And I think with Frankfurt sitting in such a good position in the Bundesliga, I don't think he's going to be allowed to leave mid-season without playing an absolute premium. I think Liverpool may be rushed a little earlier in the week when City made their bid, agreed personal terms. But I think that there is some other things at play here. And I guess we'll see in the end where he ends up. I would love Marmoush at the club. And then finally, from that exact Solanke thing, VAR, the ref's announcement, the transparency, it's something I've been calling for a very long time. I was shouted down by a lot of other people. I was told, I don't want to become too Americanized. It actually felt very fitting. It feels very good that when VAR makes a decision, the referee in the stadium can announce it, booed or not. This was the first time they saw it in action. I think it worked really well. I'm not saying therefore he had a great game. I'm not saying therefore it was completely balanced. I'm making what I feel is a valid point that Liverpool and Spurs benefited in the game from having the referee announce what the decision was on the field. It was very clear. It was a little bit clunky. I think it'll probably get a little bit easier through time for Liverpool and everyone else to technically get it within the stadium. You know, Spurs Stadium is a very impressive stadium, so I'd imagine they're not struggling for tech. But if you are going to do these kind of things, you need to be able to announce things. And I'd actually love to hear a few more of the refs' decisions. I wonder if in big crunch decisions in the future, the referee will announce this kind of thing. I think that was where the delay was for that VAR. It was like, right, let's get him on the speakers. Let's get him into a place where he can let the crowd know this is a good place to be innovative. And I think it's where the League Cup is probably going to thrive in the years to come. It's going to be treated as a testing ground and those kind of things. So, yeah, disappointment, right, guys? But that's why you play two-legged ties. That's why Liverpool played a very different game to the game that I'd imagine they'll want to play at Anfield. And coming off the back of that disappointing result on the weekend, I know this is another disappointing result. The last one felt like a loss. This one was literally a loss. That is now a draw and a loss in 2025 for Liverpool. A very contrasted experience, both for Arne Slot, who only lost once in 2024, and for Liverpool, who I think were second kind of throughout the points totals in that period. Maybe third. No, second, maybe third. It's hard to remember. I think it was second by the end of the year, including everything that Slot had done. Third, if you look at Klopp. People will point to a poor game for Liverpool. I don't feel that the storytelling around Liverpool is particularly accurate right now, with the wild swings both ways, with the focus on the extreme dramatics rather than the middle of the road performances or some of the more flat things or some of the very obvious mistakes that were made during games. Liverpool are painted as this side who are a little out of sorts at the moment, whatever it is. That's what the commentary was saying. That's what a lot of people are trying to point to at the moment. But if you look at that starting 11, if you look at Endo being in there, if you look at Quansah having to swap out mid-game, if you look at Liverpool's front line, yes, you could describe them as out of sorts as one characterisation, but you could also just say that there's a couple of players returning at the moment. There's a couple of key positions where Liverpool really kind of missed Canate this evening, I felt. And then I also think that, you know, Spurs worked out that if you press Alisson, he's probably the weakest of those people and probably the least press resistant. Bergvall certainly worked that out and it almost resulted in a goal. Those three moments, though, Bergvall, Virgil van Dijk and Bergvall again, stick with you because they feel significant. But let's just go through some of the other things, right? First of all, I still trust Alisson. I think Alisson's the best goalkeeper in the world. His touch, not always the best, but I also think that he's still the most competent. You could see, I personally think Alisson, since he's come back from the injury, has looked a little more stiff. I think Alisson is at his absolute best when he is most flexible, which seems kind of obvious to say as for a goalkeeper, but I still think is worth saying here. He still looks a little bit stiff coming back off that. Still looks like he's building up his strength, weirdly, rather than his actual flexibility. And I think, you know, I know that we need a number one, but I think why you've got such a competent number two, why rush your number one back so much? Especially, I mean, I guess what Liverpool are looking to do is get him back in that shop window, bring Mamardashvili in next season and have someone who they can rely on a little bit more from an injury standpoint, even though Arne Slot is saying I'm used to this kind of thing, these injury issues that we've had. I had them at my previous club as well. And I also think they're looking to get value in that market, show that he's still a very strong player, have him be someone who's going to help Liverpool get value in that transfer market. And at the end of the day, be someone who leaves the club on a very good note, someone who won everything. Weirdly, I know that it's very weird to paint the difference in contrast between him and someone like Trent, but give Liverpool some value. Be remembered as probably Liverpool's best goalkeeper of at least the modern era. Probably not ever, just because of the other big names in there, but at least the modern era, statistically probably ever, but there are just some other things other goalkeepers have done back in the day. And I think that counts. Like, he's someone who's just given me such great memories. That's fair enough. Doesn't mean I think that's nailed on to happen, but I do think it's something that feels quite likely for me, and I think Liverpool probably listen to offers for him in the summer, probably because of A, performances like this, and B, muscle issues, which I think you can pay as much as you want for a goalkeeper if you can't keep them fit, and it's a goalkeeper which is probably a very different kind of strain on the body. You're not going to, you're not going to be able to rely on them as much as you need to be able to rely on them, and they're a very reliant position. You become quite reliant on those goalkeepers, as we have been on Alisson throughout the years. Point made. Love Ali. Would never swap him out the side, would love to keep him in there until he's 50. Also wondering how weird it's going to be seeing him represent another team. It looks weird in a Roma jersey when I see it now. I'm not sure I will be able to take it if he ended up going to somewhere like a Real Madrid or something like that. Yeah, let's see. Unusual. He still feels very stilted in his movement is my ultimate point. Let's talk about that back line. I actually felt like Virgil van Dijk had a very good game. I think he acted as a wall throughout a lot of this. He was huge during Alisson's mistake. He was certainly huge during other times. He's just Virgil van Dijk. Other times you can just see him looking around and kind of going, come on guys, what is it that we're actually doing here? The frustration in his eyes, the frustration from a captain's perspective. He doesn't want to see anything drop away. He's spent weeks now doing interviews. And, I know it may become a meme if ultimately Liverpool didn't win the Premier League, but that one of which Dutch captain has won the Premier League? There's never been a Dutch captain that's won the Premier League. Oh, really? Like all of these kind of things, when your team are doing well, you want those things to continue. I think he's getting frustrated because actually Virgil van Dijk is performing very well at the moment. And there are other people who are letting him down right now. Trent, Konaté's performances in terms of fitness, and then Robertson, possibly Tsimikas, but I actually thought Tsimikas had a pretty good game. Go across the rest of the back line. I think Quansah right now is, I don't know if it's to do with his personal life, I don't know what else it is, but his confidence is rock bottom right now, and it's affecting the stress and the strenuous nature of what's going out on the field. He just doesn't seem to be able to get himself fit or in the right headspace. It's not particularly a great feeling to watch as a Liverpool fan, but it's also not particularly great feeling to watch just as a human being. This is a guy who was really promising, finished the Klopp era really strong, and was offered a new contract, and hasn't really, since signing that contract, fulfilled any of those expectations. A, for the salary, and B, just for a young player out there. He still needs this time to grow. I think he was probably told he'd be a second choice behind Konaté, and so probably didn't feel he was going to be thrust in, but then was thrust in earlier on in the season. Confidence took a real knock, seemingly after that. Possibly also in his personal life, considering some of the clips that have been going around about him. Not that I want to particularly go into any of those things. But I also kind of prefer Endo as a centre-back right now. I know that Slot doesn't necessarily prefer him as one of those midfield three between Grav, McAllister, Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones. So why not have him as a centre-back? He's extremely mobile, he's extremely competent, his distribution is good, his vision is good. I think he's always in the right position. I wouldn't call him a revolutionary player in that position, but I certainly feel that he's confident and competent, and that is really important to me. By the way, I'm going through this team from the back to front because I feel that back to front is at the moment how Liverpool feel. I like what I see out there in Endo, and I feel there's a leadership quality to him as well. You can tell Virgil van Dijk trusts him in what it is that he's doing, and because of his adaptability, I actually quite like what I see from him. So I would actually call him centre-back backup ahead of midfield backup right now. It would be great if we could use him in the way that we need to as a kind of a victory cigar of sorts in a lot of games, but that's not the case right now. We have what I would call a minor centre-back crisis going on back there in terms of confidence and fitness, and that's always been the problem with Quansah and Konaté. I hope that ends, but I wouldn't be against in the next round starting Endo at centre-back and kind of just that being a bit of a blueprint that we use for the next couple of games, just to show, look, competency and understanding the position and understanding what it is you have to do is going to be favoured over overall progression, especially considering we've shown some overall progression in the team. We've shown during that new manager bounce, which I definitely think that is beginning to feel like now that this is a new system that we need to get used to. And I also think, like, you know, to an extent, we're finding the limitations of what this squad can do with what Slot has got. There is a lot of brilliance in there that I'm about to get into, but there's also some key positions where we really do need to upgrade. First of all, fullback. Bradley's fantastic. And that's kind of the overall note for Bradley. I love his thrusting play. I love his tackling. I love his defensive competency. I think, again, highly competent when it comes to defence. Started this game, but when Trent came on, you see the difference in the shape of Liverpool. I think if Liverpool were to get another midfielder, and this is kind of leading onto the next section of the team anyway, so I don't really want to get into that just yet, but if Liverpool to have another midfielder like Zubimendi, Trent wouldn't maybe quite feel as important to this side because it would be Zubimendi that was responsible for that rotation of the ball. But when Trent came on, he slotted into that inside, what I would describe as a Zubimendi type position, and Liverpool Didn't concede the goal because of that. We didn't concede at all because of that. They focused on the other side. Weirdly, I didn't understand why they didn't focus on the space on that other side, but there it is. And I actually think Trent had a very solid performance. He looked really good defensively. A couple of times where he was caught down the field, but that's not really the same criticism I think a lot of people had as the last game. So don't club all of those things in together. And I also think that his distribution was fantastic. There is a time where I feel that we can spam crosses from him a little bit. There's times where it can feel a little bit aimless. And there's also times where it feels as if the opposition have worked out how to defend a Trent cross because of the lack of movement in the box. The box, for some weird reason, is behind me. And that is frustrating. On the other side, Tsimikas. Tsimikas is a very capable understudy. I love his crossfield balls. I love his underlapping and overlapping runs. Overall, I think he's a good understudy. Do I think he's a long-term prospect for Liverpool? No. And am I questioning at the moment whether I'd move on Robertson or Tsimikas in the summer? I think if Tsimikas is willing to stay and be a competent understudy, then great. If he isn't and he wants first team football, keep Robertson, keep him as an interim or stopgap type guy, someone who can essentially be a leader off the field, but also be someone who can pass on knowledge and the wisdom of left backs to any new left back coming in, especially if it's Kerkez, because I think Kerkez could do with some of that humanising that we've seen Robertson go through over the last few years, and some of the legendary feeling that is developed around him. I kind of appreciate that at this point. But I think, I'm impressed with Tsimikas. There's probably some money in there for him. And I think, again, if we're looking for a rotational summer where we're upgrading just a couple of positions, bring a little bit of money in, put a little bit of money out, considering what we did last summer, I think that's probably one of the key positions I'm looking at. And I think it has to be someone who's like a 40 to 50 million pound player, or a stats monster that is, Liverpool have dug up from somewhere, which leads me into this midfield area. I think we wouldn't be as reliant on these fullback positions, and we wouldn't be as reliant on the midfield covering, should we say, if we had someone like Zubimendi in there. I'm not saying it has to be specifically Zubimendi, but I'm talking about this role, this distributor, this almost Scholes type figure who is guarding and moving and changing the pace, he's orchestrating. He is the conductor of sorts. Gravenberch does a very good job sometimes of that. McAllister does an excellent job of driving the pace of the game, but doesn't necessarily orchestrate in the way that I would describe as Zubimendi of being able to do that. And the same goes for Gravenberch. There's times where I think his carrying of the ball, his brilliant turns, his ability to get out of difficult, tight situations on the field, his clear technical competency with the ball, all of those tick, tick, tick. That's not the same as being Zubimendi. And I think very often you can see, and especially in the clarity between those two types of players, where Liverpool feel that they lack right now. And if Trent is to move on in the summer, not that I think he necessarily will, following research, I think we should be looking at that as, again, priority number one in the summer. Not necessarily going to Atalanta and getting an attacking midfielder, but someone who's a great deep lying playmaker. Very difficult to find, very difficult to replace. But again, if McAllister is looking at moving on from the club, not that I'm starting that rumour that he is, I don't think it is that he's necessarily looking to do that, even though Real Madrid are interested in players like him, then I think I'd look at replacing him directly in the team with someone like Zubimendi, and then looking at keeping Zubimendi and someone like Szoboszlai balanced, and Gravenberch rotating in and out, possibly even looking at taking Gravenberch a little further down the field, implementing what he's very good at a little further down the field as part of that midfield pivot, and allowing both of them that space and time to be able to dictate the game where it is that they need to. Which leads me on to the third member of the midfield. We've missed Szoboszlai massively in these last two games, putting pressure on Brasuma in this game, putting pressure on Bentancur when he was on the field. By the way, we'd love to see him coming back 100%. Fit, bill of health, brilliant, great player. Sad to see what happened early on. I thought they actually played really well after that. But Liverpool could have made more of them having to make early changes from a cutthroat perspective, should we say. And I think Curtis over these last two games, what I've realised is I much prefer him on the left than I do on the right. It's not that I don't think he's competent, but again, I think I prefer what he does with the ball on the left. I prefer the rotation of the ball out there. There are times where he crosses over too much with Jota's position for me while he's out there on the field on that right-hand-ish side. And he seems to not get under people's feet, but sometimes just not be in the position which is going to fuel the overall move and facilitate Liverpool's movement of the ball. Fair enough. I think it could get better. Into that front line, Salah. A few people are accusing him of being anonymous in these last couple of games, and I think that is a limited evaluation, probably from people who are watching highlights of the game. Salah is always dangerous. He always has gravity out on the field, and I think that's a huge part of playing alongside Salah. You understand where the ball goes and where defenders go because Mo Salah is in that position. That is my top line. Because people are so interested in the prolific nature of goal and assist Mo Salah, goal and assist Mo Salah, they always hold him to that exact same standard and seem to think that that is all that Liverpool coaches expect of him. That's not necessarily true. In big games like this, especially where they start with someone like Jota and Gakpo, the emphasis will always be on that other side, or will always be on Jota and then Gakpo, and Salah will have to make a lot more of his own opportunities. It leads to him looking very isolated and leads to him looking as if he's not as involved in the game. I thought he actually had a pretty solid game today. I wouldn't say like blew the doors off, but there are a couple of times where you just went, oh, if you'd have finished that. There are a couple of times where overall, if you just finished that, it would have been great. Similar for Trent, he had that, like, I will cover it now. There was that moment where it was on that right-hand side attack, ball goes through, so it was a left-hand side attack, the ball goes over to Trent, and he kind of, I don't know if you've watched much snooker in your life, but he'll almost skew ball, is that the phrase? The ball, and put a real spin on it that it almost sends it into like a tornado type movement. It's so difficult to do. I'd imagine there aren't many people in the world who are able to strike the ball like that. And it was cleared off the line by Spurs, but it was such an unusual technique that it was instantly, it made me think of Real Madrid, because it made me think, that's why they want to pay all that money. First of all, they, I'll do Trent another day, but first of all, they want that kind of entertainment. They want that kind of, we're unique. And I don't understand, after I evaluated Remedy's video the other day about the uniqueness of Real Madrid and Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I didn't disagree with the narrative, but I did disagree with the overall conclusion, which was he can only get that narrative at Real Madrid. He can get that at Liverpool, but I'm just not sure why we're not shouting about Trent more. If he is so special to us, if he is so important to us, shout about that more in the same way as we shouted about Gerrard, and to some extent in the same way we shout about Curtis Jones. It frustrates me. Gakpo, not necessarily quiet, but I think they to an extent have worked out how to manage that inside hook. I actually think he was pretty promising today, but you saw the difference when Luis Diaz came on. There were a couple of times where he combined really well with Tsimikas, and I preferred that. It's just the way that you play against the opposition. Very clear to me that Gakpo's still a world-class player. He's still having world-class days, and he's been very important to Liverpool recently. I don't think he was all that far away from getting a goal today, and there are times where if he'd have been just a centimetre or a metre another way, I think he gets a goal. Jota's still coming back for me. He's still coming back into full fitness and fitting into this squad. It's frustrating to say, it's frustrating to watch because he was so white hot earlier this season. And there's times we see him just fouled off the ball. If the referee doesn't back that up, if the referee doesn't do something to try to back the opposition off Jota, he just gets bullied for whole games because they realise, it's seen as a tough player, not necessarily he's weak, but that we can do whatever we want to him and that'll be fine because the referee's not going to punish us because he's seen as a bit of a tough guy. He's seen as like a bit of a bit part tough guy kind of player. It's rubbish, but it happens. Núñez actually had a good game today. Distribution was good. I thought his distribution was very solid, actually. He almost scored a goal. He must be thinking to himself, what is it that I have to do to get myself a goal for this club, but just in general? He must be begging for an international break. He must be begging for some time where he can get away, clear his mind of all of the rubbish that's going on around Liverpool right now, and just be Darwin Núñez. I feel kind of bad for him, to be honest. He was brought in a previous regime. Is clearly not surplus to requirements, but is a different requirement now. And I love his effort. I really appreciated what he's done. It doesn't mean he's the right fit. You can go on a really great date with someone when you're young and still realise we are not going to have that long-term chemistry. We're not going to be together forever. It's fair enough. You have a great moment. You have a great date. You have some great trysts in your life. That's not the person that you marry. So I think Jota, for me, is still our preferred striker through the middle. even though I think Diaz actually came on and put in a pretty good performance. I still think I would have rather had Diaz and Gakpo. My final note on the whole game was what I put down as combos. There are sometimes some cancel out combos I just don't think work. At the moment, Curtis doesn't cancel others out, but I don't like that combo of him and Jota. At the moment, I don't like Jota and Gakpo. I prefer Diaz and Gakpo, but that didn't happen. I almost prefer Tsimikas and Virgil van Dijk, and I actually prefer Endo and Virgil van Dijk over Quansah and Virgil van Dijk, but that is the kind of thing you say to a young guy and he gets upset. So, he's still a great player. He just needs to get his confidence back. I actually prefer the combo of Trent and Salah, only because you can see how much confidence Salah has in what Trent is doing, and the movement and the space it allows him seems to unlock him a little bit more. If we had someone to challenge Salah or understudy him, which is a much more accurate phrase of what I'd like them to do, then I think we'd be in a much better position because we could take some of that pressure off him. But weirdly, he's unsubbable to some extent right now because we don't have someone who can just come in and fulfill that. My overall note, which I don't think will ever happen, but could happen, is if we'll play Harvey Elliott there, I'd love to see that more. I'd also love to see Szoboszlai there because he's done that on the continent for his old team with RB. Just play with that. I think it could lead to something good, and it would probably allow him a little bit more of that space and slightly less of the responsibility to be able to do that. It's kind of a rogue shout. I doubt it'll ever happen unless, we're in like a cup style competition. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Next game this weekend is at Accrington Stanley, and I want to finish on this. This isn't the preview for that, but I want to finish on this. Spurs looked like they knew some of our numbers today, as if they got elements of our game plan down. That has not just been the case since the Manchester United game. The Manchester United game is not the turning point for the season. The turning point for the season was the end of that difficult run that Liverpool had, where big teams had worked out small, kinks in Liverpool's armour. Is it kink or what? Where you basically work out, right, if we do this, this and this, then we will get these bits of joy from playing Liverpool. And before that, it was very difficult to work that out because Slot had done a very good job of rotating players, and players actually covered very well because they felt so confident in these new positions. Now they're beginning to second guess themselves. Ali is second guessing himself with this passing. Quansah's constantly second guessing everything. Virgil van Dijk is probably one of the few people who doesn't even second guess himself in the team. He second guesses other people, which causes them to second guess themselves. Simi sometimes second guesses, but actually I thought he had a really solid game today. Trent definitely second guessing himself, but you can see there's moments where he's going, look, I proved you wrong, but I don't need a player in my team that's looking to prove me wrong. I need a player in my team that's my scouser, my guy, my captain or vice captain, my person that when I look at him, I go, I love you. I 100% trust you. I don't even have to worry about you. And at the moment, that's not Trent. Bradley is coming back into it, but I still think he's fantastic. Grav, I actually think, is one of our most consistent performers. Against Manchester United, he got some criticism, but actually I thought it was great against Spurs today. And the goal did not come from him being poor. None of their opportunities came from him being poor. They came from long balls that exploited Liverpool's backline positioning. And one of them was a goal that was not a goal. And the other one was only because Tsimikas was not on the field. McAllister, love his energy. Curtis, I'm not quite sure what he's doing on the right at the moment. Jota, I've made this note. Salah, I've made that note. And Gakpo, I think is such a moment player that the problem is if he doesn't perform that moment, people begin to question his overall performance. That's frustrating. Nunez will move on very soon. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. I know that is a lot of notes. I know that is a lot. I've been mulling this over. Trent, I have big notes on. I will do another Trent video probably tomorrow morning from this hotel room in Manchester. Yes, I'm away shooting. But I appreciate you guys watching the channel. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. If you can, give something through the Patreon this year. It really helps the channel. It really helps me continue to make what I'm making. And if you can, get in the Discord. Link in the description. Get down there. Go be one of the Discord guys. Go be one of the people who I love chatting to. And I will see you guys on the flip side. It's been a frustrating couple of days for Liverpool. Accrington Stanley, there's a preview for that to come. I don't think Liverpool get out of this funk, even if they were to perform against Accrington Stanley, until we play Nottingham Forest. That is what I'm earmarking as a redemption game. And I don't even want to put that level of pressure on it because I don't think we need to be redeemed just yet after a draw and a loss in the cup. We play Spurs a month from now back at Anfield. in an attempt to try and make Arne Slot our 7th manager to win the League Cup. Some people haven't even won it 7 times. I appreciate the effort that you guys do in coming back to the channel, commenting. I've had a couple of back and forths over the last few days with a couple of people where, because the Real Madrid fans have been so unpleasant in the last couple of days, it's made it difficult to differentiate between genuinely critical comments and people trying to make constructive comments and some people who are just Real Madrid fans who are sniping. It's not, that's my fault, all right? That's my perception of the way that things work. That's not me saying don't come to the channel and don't watch, but it is me saying if I've been a little spiky with you, because I have said to a few people just don't bother commenting or don't come watch the video if you don't enjoy it, but there's also been a few people who've kind of made what I consider to be slightly awkward comments about Liverpool/Real Madrid, and I just don't really enjoy interacting with those kind of things. It's not me saying you can't have an opinion. It's not me saying your opinion isn't valid. It's me saying this is a community that I'm trying to curate with you guys, and sometimes when I hear delusional Real Madrid views, the argument back to you or to me is not, well, your team sucks. Appreciate you guys watching the videos, all right? I appreciate the people who will actually debate me in the comments and be constructive. There was a guy the other day, said he was a Real Madrid and a Liverpool fan. Fair enough. I really appreciated the comments you left. I thought you came across very well. You're a lovely guy. And I appreciate a lot of you as the lovely people that you are. I appreciate the effort you put into the channel as much as my effort, and I hope you guys stick around. Much love. Bye.